I'm gonna have to fire people.
Is that a shot? You didn't even give us a chance to tell you yet.
Well, somebody
All right,
memory is better. They don't need us. So I mean,
in my defense, we only supposed to tell you if you forget. So if you remember it.
I need you. Week 5, nursing and the law. Can y'all see my share here?
Yes.
Okay, and I am recording. I believe so.
yes, I see a recording.
Okay, well, here we go. I'm gonna make this bigger. As I said, very important that you all learn the terms here. Here are your learning objectives. It's very important, you guys, to know your Nurse Practice Act. Very important, because we're going to hit you with this now. We're going to hit this with you on your exam, and we're going to hit you with this when y'all get into management. Very important. If we were to start clinicals next week or week after next, if we were to start, it would be you all's job to know what you can and cannot do as students. What I can and cannot do as an instructor. What you can and cannot do on the floor, or what you see other nurses do that, depending on what their positions are, that they can and cannot do. So it's very important to know what your Nurse Practice Act is in every state that you work in, because each state has a few differences. So if you decide to go practice in another state, you need to know what the Nurse Practice Act is. There's the law, there's your policy and procedure, and then there's the Nurse Practice Act. Your license is determined on what you do or don't do in your Nurse Practice Act. So your NPA takes precedence over policy and procedure in your facility you work at. So remember that. That's why it's important for you to know what your NPA is for your state. Okay, describe the responsibilities of your state's Board of Nursing. That might be a question on your midterm. Explain the limits, including prohibited acts of a licensed practical nurse within your state. Compare and contrast the state regulations governing registered nurses, okay, versus LPNs and LVNs. We have RNs have our own Nurses Practice Act, which involves us, which is then, it's included in the Nurse Practice Act. We all have one Nurses Practice Act. It's just that there's things for LVNs and there's things for RNs. So sometimes it's good if you get a chance to read what RNs, what laws that they have to abide by as well. Discuss the impact of the Institute of Medicine, Future of Nursing Report leading changes, y'all can read that part. Discuss the use of evidence-based resources such as the Joint Commission, National Patient Safety Goals to assist LVNs in delivering safe care and avoiding a potential lawsuit. Define the nursing standards of care, differentiate between common law and statutory law. All of this is in your books. Explain the difference between criminal and civil action. Discuss the difference between intentional and unintentional torts. List the 4 elements needed to prove negligence. Discuss the typical step in a lawsuit. Differentiate between student and student vocational nurses and instructor liability in preventing a lawsuit. Discuss the need for personal malpractice insurance. Explain the nurse's role in disclosure, like child abuse, elderly abuse. So basically it's saying, explain your role in the event you come across or believe a child is being abused, a mother is being abused, or an elderly person is being abused. CS nurses got a lot to do, a lot going on. The Nurse Practice Act defines nursing practice. It establishes standards for nurses in your state. Remember, Nurse Practice Act is your Bible, and it defines your practice in nursing. And it's different. It varies from state to state. So know what yours is for your state. I wouldn't be surprised, and I would really recommend that you all look at your Nurse Practice Act and see what it discloses, okay? It's very important for you to know that, probably on your midterm or final. You don't need to know everything, but you do need to know some important things about it, and eventually you need to know everything because you all are going to be practicing licensed nurses, and it will protect you. You work hard for your license, so don't do anything that's going to take that license away from you. Basic terminology.
When you work at a hospital, do you have to have your own insurance to work there?
No, it's recommended that you do. Whatever hospital you work at, you are under their protection, basically. But it's important that you don't make any gross errors, because sometimes, depending on how much that family member or that person sues you for, your hospital might just pay a certain amount and leave you responsible with the balance, okay? Or they might decide you were so grossly negligent in what you did that we are not going to offer this to you. So I would say yes, but I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm knocking on wood. I've always went by the hospital, what they have. If you work in a small facility, find out about their insurance, whether their insurance covers you. Because some small hospitals, being as small as they are, they may cover you 20%, 30%, 100%. That's something that you need to ask your employee when you start practicing as nurses, okay? So you need to know these terms, basic terminology. You need to know activities of daily living, that's called ADL, which includes basic care tasks like brushing your teeth, combing hair, bathing, toileting. Those are called activities of daily living, which is a term you need to get familiar with, all these terms, because you're going to use it in your day-to-day. Basic nursing care is care that can be performed by the LVN. Basic patient situation is condition is predictable, stable, and chronic. So an LVN performs basic nursing care and basic patient situations, which means that an RN should not dictate to you a patient that is non-predictable, unstable, and acute. So if something is acute going on with this patient, and this patient is unstable, and you can't predict the outcome of this situation, an RN should not give you that position, that patient. So that's why I say it's important to learn what you can and cannot do as an LVN. A complex nursing situation. Condition is non-predictable. Care is beyond the scope of LVN, but needs to identify when care needs to be passed on or upgraded. So as an LVN, you need to know when a condition becomes non-predictable and is beyond your scope of nursing. If that should happen to you, you should talk to your RN or your charge nurse, because they will have to be either fully responsible in taking care of that patient, or they need to be right there with you handling that situation. Never do something that you are not comfortable with or have not been trained to do, or if it's not under your role as an LVN. Because if you mess up, it's on you. Okay? Delegated medical action, order written by a healthcare provider given to a nurse to enact. Once again, it's basically doctor's orders. He's delegated you to do this. But if it's not in your capacity and your job role as an LVN to do this, you have your RN to do that. That's why there always has to be an RN within your unit to do certain things if you are not by role to do it. Or if you're working in a nursing home at night, you might not have an RN on site, but she needs to be she needs to be on call in case you need to call her. If necessary, she may even have to come out. So
We're supposed to have one for every shift. It's supposed to be mandatory in a nursing home that you have a RN for every shift. Like for the morning shift, they have the director of nursing. For the 2 to 10 shift or 3 to 11 shift, we have someone that comes in, and then at nighttime it's usually one of the floor nurses, but they have to be a RN.
okay. Well, there's some places where an RN is not there, but she is on call in case things come up in some places. So I'm just letting you know. That's another question when you're taking on jobs. What are the RN's positions in regards to, are they going to be available on each shift? That's a question you should ask when you take on a job. Oh, that went back to, let me go back. Okay, content of Nurse Practice Acts. General provisions, responsibilities, organization, approval, and administration of nursing programs, continuing education. Very important in your Nurse Practice Act to always continue your education, because guess what? When you get ready to renew your license, LVNs are responsible in having so many CEUs to get their license renewed. Like for RNs, it's 20. We have to have 20. And your license are renewed every 2 years. So within those 2 years, you have to have 20 new CEUs, continuing education units. LVNs, I'm not absolutely sure. I want to say they need to have at least 14 or 15, but I'm not sure. The way to find out is to go into your Nurse Practice Act to find out. I will look that up, but it's important that I want you all to look it up as well, how many hours of continuing education you will need. Functions of the state boards of nursing is under general provisions. The general procedures.
When you say continuing education, are you saying like in services?
No, not in services. They are like usually online. Your
They're
state board.
CEUs online.
Yeah, it's a certified education unit.
So licenses in Texas, if any license, because I hold like 2 of them, 3. So any of my licenses, I have to take continual education, say some law may have changed or something like that to add, to continue the license. You have to continually learn, put it like that.
Yeah, you have to continually learn stuff. Usually it's certain ones that Texas require you to have. Each state has a certain type of continuing education that they will accept. So you need to be aware of that too.
It's also like the CNA, when you renew your CNA license thing, it's kind of
But see,
like
that's what I was asking, because we call them in services.
It's the
It's
same.
done online, but that's just what we call them. We call them in services. I mean, you have your in services that you have in the building where there's the paperwork, but then there's also training that you have to do online every month in order to keep your license active.
Oh.
Well, it's a little different for the nurses because theirs doesn't have to be done monthly. It's just annually. Like the massage therapy.
annually, but you don't want to wait till the last minute before you get
Exactly. So
licensed.
that's why we do ours monthly. Like the reason, okay, I'm saying monthly because every month it's a different one put up there. You don't per se have to go in there literally every month to do it, but it's a different one that gets put up there every month.
Well, in-service is different from actual continuing education in regards to get in nursing. An in-service is something basically that you do in the hospital to learn a new task, learn a new way of doing things. Continuing education could be evidence-based practice. It could be any, like, say for instance, you work in OB-GYN. They might teach you how to use the heart monitor, the fetal heart monitor. That's an in-service. They show you how to do that. You don't get credit for that in-service. What you get credit for is learning what hyperemesis, how to deal with a patient with hyperemesis. That would be like a CEU online, teaching you how to take care of a patient that has hyperemesis. See, it's a different kind of teaching that is not done at your job. And sometimes, every once in a while, they may have in-services, like people may come out to your job, a nurse may come out to your job and teach you something. She will tell you whether or not that could be used as a CEU. And the way you kind of know whether you can use it as a CEU, because you read it, you get tested on it, you pass it, and then they will give you a certification for it right then and there. Whereas some in-services, all that you do is sign in that you attended it. That's it. That's kind of like the difference between the two.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like it's literally exactly what you just said. Exactly what you just said. You have to take a test. You gotta watch videos. You gotta do the training. All that.
Well, you may not have to do the training on that. I don't know what CNAs actually do. It could be similar. I'm just telling you what an LVN CEU looks like. So if there's any training or in-services you have to do as a LVN, that person who's doing the training will tell you whether it's eligible for CEU contact hours or not. They will tell you that. Because some in-services are not CEU certified. So just know that. Okay. General procedures, fees, licensure processes. It tells you all these different things in the Nurses Practice Act. Elements of unprofessionalism, conduct. It gives you information on related to reasons for a suspended or revoked license, impaired professional program. All of that is under general provisions of a Nurse Practice Act. Responsibilities, general functions of the licensed nurse, what the LVN does, what the RN does. Definition of nursing, specific definitions for LVNs and RNs. Standards of nursing conduct. All of that is under your Nurse Practice Acts. Organization, approval, and administration of nursing programs. All of that is under your Nurse Practice Act. And once again, continuing education. State Board of Education, functions of the board. There is a page in your book, I think it's box 7-1. I don't know what page it's on, but it does give you a rundown on what the functions of the State Board of Education is. These are some of them. Please get to know that information. Y'all have this in your PPE. You have this on your PowerPoints, and it's in your book as well. And to look at the box 7-1 in your book. disciplinary responsibility of the board. Reasons to take action against the nurse. That's something y'all definitely should know. Drug and alcohol violations, fraud, theft, and other infractions can result in your license being suspended or revoked or denied for renewal. So these are some reasons right here to take action against the nurse. So once again, it's important to know what your standards of care is and your Nurse Practice Act. Only licensed LPNs, RNs may use the term nurse. So you're not a nurse until you're a nurse.
Right.
Can you go back to that one? Because even in the book, not all of those were on the 7.2.
Right there, disciplinary responsibility of the board.
Yes, thank you.
Also on this review that I'm gonna do, I'm gonna give you some scenarios, some questions. It might be individual questions. It might just be questions thrown out at the group. I just want you all to make sure that you're reading your notes and you're doing some of the exercises, and definitely your PowerPoint. And once again, I'm gonna tell you, everything is not on your PowerPoint. A lot of things comes from your note and your books. And everything is not gonna be black and white.
So it's best for us to just read the book to know exactly what we need to know.
You need to read the book.
Okay.
You need to listen to the lecture. You need to, I would say, practice know your objectives of each chapter. In the beginning of every PowerPoint, it gives you objectives to look for. So you need to know those objectives because your tests are based on that information. We're not here to read the book for you or to read the PowerPoint for you. We just add to what's on your PowerPoint and what's in your books.
So our
like-
test is going to be based off of the PowerPoint, what we go over in lecture.
And what else did I say? PowerPoint, lecture, and the book. And your clinical objectives, which is at the beginning of every PowerPoint. So moving on. And to another thing, instead of, this is a lot of information. If you need to take a picture of that, if you're not on your phones, take a picture of these long things like this, because when I pause, you know, it kind of slows things down a bit. And this is in your PowerPoint and this is in your book. Okay, we did this part. In some states, recent graduates will apply for a temporary permit to practice nursing as a graduate practical nurse. So after you graduate from this course, you are considered, you will receive a temporary permit, which some places will allow you to work as a graduate practical nurse until you pass your boards. They give you so much time to pass your boards. It's usually, I know CACP, you have 53 days to take your state boards after you graduate. Once you take your boards, you're considered a graduate nurse if you're hired as a graduate nurse. But within that period of time, you have to pass your boards within a certain length of time, or you go back to being a CNA, or you go back to being not employed. So I just want you guys to be aware of that. Yes, you can practice after you graduate as a graduate nurse, but no, they will give you a certain length of time to take your licensure and pass it. Assurance of an LPN, LVN license can also be impacted by a previous criminal or child abuse history. So you have to be free of any felonies, previous criminal history, certain misdemeanors. You need to be aware of that, which is also in your Nurse Practice Act, or that can impact you getting your license. Working in other states. Interstate endorsements. It is possible to work in another state without repeating the NCLEX, PN, professional nurse exam, after you meet that state's criteria for licensure by endorsement. So basically what that means is, depending on if the state you are in presently is a compact state, then you are allowed to work somewhere else based on what their criteria is. You won't have to repeat the NCLEX exam. Once you've done the NCLEX and passed it, you do not have to repeat it again. But some states require a little bit more of something. So just make sure that if you decide you want to work somewhere else, Texas is a compact state, which means that the only thing you have to do is get in touch with the State Board of Nursing, tell them where you want to work, get in touch with the state board in which you're going to plan on working in, and find out what other criteria you need to work in that state. Okay? Multi-state licensure is a mutual recognition model for nursing regulation. So you can work, basically it's saying you can work in different states as long as you meet the criteria for each of those states. These are compact states. Texas happens to be one of them. And it tells you what states basically you can go and work in, which they're basically in combination with each other. And there might only be a few little differences or qualifications they require of you to be licensed in their state. So it's quite a few of them. And you'll see this again in management. Online verification of licensure, online verification of nursing licensure, online database confirms nurse's license number, registration, expiration date, and whether any board action or disciplinary has taken place. It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So in other words, when you go work on a job, it is not necessary for that employee to have a copy of your nursing license. All the thing she has to do is call the State Board of Nurses. She can get all the information she needs. She can get your, whether you've been a criminal, if you're a criminal, or if you passed or not passed your state board, if you are who you say you are, all of this information they can get, your employee can get from your name and your date of birth. So never lie. If you change your name because you got married, or you divorced and changed your name back, it's very important that you let the State Board of Nursing know as soon as possible. All right. Unlicensed assistive personnel, UAP. Those are CNAs, CMAs, or whoever else is considered unlicensed that assist patients, okay? The use of the UAP is growing. They are supervised by the LPN, LVN, and RN, okay? Providing safe, high quality care is always the focus. So as LVNs, you all can delegate to CNAs or CMAs. You can delegate to them. As long as you are aware of their roles and responsibilities. So you can't give them something that they haven't done before or does not coincide with what their role dictates. So you can't go and tell a CNA to draw blood. Can't do that because that is not in their job description. They may say, oh, I know how to do this. I've done this somewhere else. You let them do it. They do something wrong or someone catches you. Guess who's in trouble? You. For delegating that. So it's very important. Y'all come as licensed nurses and RNs, you come with a lot of responsibility. So remember that and know that. How the law affects licensed vocational nursing. Common law versus statutory law. Common law originates in the courts. Common law falls under informed consent and statutory law. Now, common law is one way of establishing standards of legal conduct and is useful in settling disputes. Common law originates in the courts. Underneath common law, informed consent and a patient's right to refuse treatment are examples of common law. So informed consent is an example of common law. A patient has the right to refuse anything, refuse you as a nurse, refuse treatment. They can refuse anything they want to refuse at any time. Statutory law is law developed by the legislative branch of the state and the United States Congress of the federal government. The National Practice Act, the Nursing Practice Act is a statutory law governed by states. Differences exist across the United States. So depending on what state you're in, your Nurse Practice Act may differ. So that's why it's important to learn in your state what you're supposed to do as an LPN, because it does differ from state to state. Criminal versus civil action. Criminal action involves people and society as a whole, misdemeanors and felonies. Civil action involves individual rights and results in payment of money to the injured person. Underneath civil rights, intentional tort, general duty, unintentional tort, which is under negligence and malpractice. A criminal act involves the people and society as a whole, as I said. A misdemeanor is less serious offense, punishable by less than a year. Taking a narcotic from a patient and giving the patient another substance in its place is considered a misdemeanor. Felony is a serious, punishable by more than a year. Nurse gives a bunch of morphine to kill patients. That's a felony. A nurse injects a patient with a legal drug to hasten death or remove life support before a patient has been pronounced dead by the MD. Those are all felonies. Civil action involves the individual rights, as I said, as a result in payment of money to the injured person. An intentional tort is meant to cause harm. An unintentional tort, you didn't mean to cause harm. So it's like negligence it falls under negligence and malpractice. Your book goes into it a little more deeper, but intentional torts would be like assault and battery, false imprisonment, defamation, libel and slander, abuse, whether it be physical or emotional. Those are intentional torts due to do harm. Those are things that nurses or the medical personnel do to cause harm. These things right here. Let's see. Y'all got that? Everybody got that?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Intentional torts is to do harm. It includes assault and battery, false imprisonment, defamation, libel and slander, abuse, being physical or emotional.
Okay, yes, ma'am, thank you.
Those are called intentional torts.
When they say being physical or emotional, like, oh, I see it. I'm sorry. Like when you are talking to a patient any kind of way or treating them bad without necessarily hitting them.
Yeah, physical abuse. It could be like not feeding them, or putting a gag in their mouth to shut them up.
Or scaring them.
You know, yeah, anything that you do physical to cause harm to a patient. Emotional abuse is saying, emotional abuse would be like, let me think of something. Like telling them that you'll never get out of here, or your family doesn't care about you. They don't ever come see you. Nobody likes you. You know, the nurses don't like you. You know, that's emotional abuse to a patient.
That's so sad.
It happens. Or say something to the nature, if you keep acting like this, I'm not going to get you this, or I'm not going to get you that. That's emotional abuse. Because you're doing something that will potentially cause harm to that patient. And it does happen. So if you see it, report it, because it's illegal.
Yeah, we're about to fight. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Okay, once again, intentional and unintentional tort. Intentional tort, assault and battery, false imprisonment. False imprisonment, of course, would be tying a person up, putting restraints on them. You know, putting a restraint on a patient without an order is against the law. That's false imprisonment. Every job, every facility has a restraint policy that you all need to know. You not reading it does not mean you are exempted if you do something wrong. Just because you didn't read it, it was there, you just didn't read it. So know this, okay? Defamation, talking about a patient to another employee, like that damn Mrs. Smith, you know, her big fat, you know, whatever, you know, I can't stand her. She stinks, she's this or that. That's a defamation. And that's not for anybody to hear, and that's not anything for you to share with someone else. You know, the people's ear.
But nurse, what if she really do stink?
Clean her up.
Okay.
What you need to do as a nurse. I mean, you don't tell other people that. You don't get out there and share that with fellow nurses, or out there in the open, or on the elevator, or in the cafeteria, on the way home. You know, you don't do that. Physical and emotional abuse, I explained that. Unintentional torts. The nurse did not intend to hurt the patient, but she did. Okay. Malpractice, professional negligence, insurance for nurses. This is why it's important for nurses to have insurance. That's why I always tell you guys, You don't have to purchase malpractice insurance because it could be a little expensive. I don't think it is. It depends. Some places you can get it for like $100 for a whole year. You just have to kind of shop around. But most jobs will have malpractice insurance on their nurses. It's your job to find out how much and how much they're willing to, how far or what you have to do to create a problem where they wouldn't pay for your insurance, won't pay for your malpractice insurance or drop you, okay? If you have a couple of little incidents in a year, you know, they might decide you're a risk for them and they may drop you. So it is good sometimes to have your own malpractice insurance. That's just something to think about, something to talk to your bosses about wherever you go. Most common malpractice acts relate to actions or lack of action. Nurses assume liability for their own actions. Consider purchasing liability insurance. You need to see boxes 7.6 and box 7.7. They give you reasons why it's important to get insurance and why that facility may drop you depending on what. So it's very important to know those things. Negligence or malpractice. This is just some information for you. What is a breach of duty in nursing?
That you don't
It
do your
occurs,
job.
huh?
You don't do your job.
Basically, it is. It occurs when a nurse does or does not do what a reasonable nurse would have done under the same or similar circumstances. This means that the nurse care fell below the acceptable standard of care. Okay. Know what a breach, know examples of breach of duty. 4 elements needed to prove negligence: duty, breach of duty, damages, and proximate cause. Duty, an example of duty: nurse assumes and has a responsibility to care for their patient, no matter what. Breach of duty: nurse did not adhere to the standards of care. Damages: an injury did occur. Proximate cause: know these terms. Patient was injured as a result of a breach of duty. An example of negligence. I'm going to give you a few examples. A store owner or a nurse who fails to put up a caution wet area floor sign after mopping up a spill and a patient slips and falls. That's an example of negligence. Because the sign isn't up, the floor is wet, you didn't clean the floor up, you didn't put a sign up, so the patient fell, that's negligence. A nurse in a nursing home who forgets to feed a patient who needs help to eat, causing the patient to starve to death, or to starve, causing emotional and physical abuse. That's a criminal negligence. A nurse who has not identified a patient using 2 identifiers and gives someone else's medication, who that patient has an allergy to, and patient has an anaphylactic reaction or shock, when it goes into anaphylactic shock. So those are all examples of negligence, okay? So know what examples of negligence are, know the term of all these and the examples, because you may get examples and it tells you, well, which one of these is this? So it's not going to be black and white for you guys. Like I said, critical thinking in nursing. Liability. Kinds of liability is personal liability, vicarious liability, institutional liability, and common causes of liability. Personal liability hold you responsible for your own behavior. That's what personal liability is. Vicarious liability responsibility of the actions of others because of the relationship, such as a borrowed servant doctrine. That is, an employee is responsible for paying for actions of servant, which is the nurse. Captain of the ship doctrine is, for instance, in the operating room, the surgeon assumes responsibility for all. Institutional liability is, for instance, healthcare facility assumes responsibility for your actions. So those are different types of liability. Lack of safety, knowledge, skill, observation and reporting, documentation, acceptance of responsibility for nursing actions. So those are common causes of liability. Y'all get that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Accountability. I have it, it's cut off in my thing. I can't see the top part of that. Accountability in nursing. Nursing demands that you be responsible, be reliable, be trustworthy.
Responsibility and accountability in nursing, page 96.
Thank you. That's right. That's correct. Nursing demands that you be responsible, be reliable, be trustworthy. Nurses demand that you be accountable. You are answerable to yourself, to your assigned patient, to your team leader, to your preceptor, to the physician, and to your instructor who constantly evaluates your work. So that is why if you were in clinical and even doing skills, and I'm going to tell you in skills, things are going to get a little harder, whereas you're not going to be prompted on what you need to know how to do. That's why it's very important you all to know your medications, because we're not going to give you hints, because in truth, when you get out there, you're going to need to know these things. So know them and know them well. Student nurses are held accountable for the nursing care they give. This emphasizes the necessity to prepare for providing care for assigned patients in your clinical area. So you need to prepare to provide care for your assigned patients. What that basically means is that when you are assigned a patient, the first thing you do is to go to that patient's chart, read up on that patient, find out what that patient's diagnosis is, find out their allergy, find out what they do as treatment as on a daily basis, find out what medications they're on and how often are they on it and when the last time they took it. You need to know all these things before you go out on the floor. You need to know whether these people are able to get up or not get up. Are they able to eat by themselves or not? Whether they've taken a bath today or not, whether they need a particular treatment today, are they going to surgery that day, or are they going to dialysis that day? These are the things you need to know. Some of this you pick up on report. When they give you a report, a good report, a nurse will tell you what you need to know about your patient and what has went on with that patient over on their shift and what that patient may need for the next shift. But it is your job to find out by reading the chart, get a picture of what your patient's about. And then you go in there and you visualize your patient. You take a quick look at that patient to see if there's any needs that need to be met right now. Okay? So that's what preparing to take on your assigned patient entails. Functioning beyond the scope of practice and experience. If you are asked to perform a duty beyond the scope of your title, what do you do, guys?
If you're not allowed, like legally,
Say
then
that you're not licensed to do it.
Okay, so I told you to go do this. I'm your charge nurse and I'm telling you to go do this. I'm your doctor. I'm the doctor here. I'm the attending doctor. I'm the surgeon. I'm telling you to go take that change that first dressing on that patient?
If it's under my scope of practice, I can do it. But if it's not, I would just tell them I'm not licensed to do it.
Yeah, like usually no.
And then what you'll do?
Go find another nurse that can.
Okay.
You'll
You'll find, and you'll talk to your, anything that you are unsure of. You should talk to your nurse about it, your RN about it. You don't go talk to another LVN, oh girl, let me show you how to do that, because she might be over practicing her scope of practice. Go talk to your RN, that's what she's here for.
I pulled out a tooth once, but it was an accident. I took an impression and the tooth came out in the impression.
Okay,
Not the same. But if
so
Miss
was
Jackie,
taking an impression of your, taking an impression was part of your job duty?
Yes, ma'am, it was, but the tooth was falling out, so it came out with the impression.
Okay, then that you didn't do anything wrong because the tooth came out with the impression. Was that your fault that the tooth came out?
No, ma'am, it wasn't.
Okay. When seeking employment, did I push it wrong? Yeah. When seeking employment, ask what is included in your job. The period of orientation you will receive, what the orientation will cover, who will do the orientation. Those are important questions. See box 711 on functioning beyond the scope of practice and experience, okay? These are questions you need to ask your employee. They expect you to ask these questions. Some do, some don't, but guess what? You need to know these things. You're a new nurse. You need to ask all the questions you could possibly ask, okay? If they act weird because you ask them a lot of questions, you don't belong on that job, trust me. Specific patient situations. Legal precedent has established that the healthcare agency also has a responsibility to the patient. Privacy and confidentiality, information that must be revealed, patient's rights. I want you to see box 712 and box 713 in your book in reference to that. What time is it, guys?
2:30.
Okay, I have, ooh. Well, I'm gonna go through this really, really fast here. The HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. It was initiated in 2003. Its purpose is protection of privacy, administrative simplification, and security standards. You'll hear that a lot throughout your nursing career. Patient competency. You can read this as well. And y'all need to read it because it's important. I'm probably not going to be able to go through all of this, but I just want you to be aware of what you can legally do and what you legally can't do. So you can snapshot that real quick or slide 27. I'll go through that. Okay, is this patient competent?
no,
Why?
he's drunk.
He needs surgery for a broken arm. So could you talk to this man about informed consent or anything right now?
No,
Okay, good. What about this? Is this patient competent?
yes.
Why is she competent?
It looks like she's in her right mind at the moment.
She's married. She has a small child. Would she be able to give her baby some cough medicine for a cold? Would she be competent enough to do that?
Possibly, but unless you actually see her and talk to her, it's hard to make that decision.
Okay, exactly. Patient's right to consent. General, implied consent, informed consent, and authorized consent. You gotta know this, okay? Gotta know it. General
On
consent,
100, guys.
huh?
That's on page 100, informed consent.
Know this. You will have to know this, okay? and we'll go over this again. And end of life issues, I think that's basically an advanced directives and do not resuscitate orders. That's the last of this. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna probably go over it next week with you. It's only like 4 pages. But I would suggest what you should do is to make sure that you read this part of it so you'll understand it. So we can flip right through this real quickly next week. See, my thing is, guys, and I'm sorry that I try to give you examples when I can, but when I give you examples, it slows me down to do this thing. But I want you to understand your reading. That's why it's important for you guys to read ahead. So if you have any questions or it's something you don't understand, we can discuss it then in the beginning. So you all won't have to ask, well, why this, why that? Can you go back to this? Because I want to be able to cover everything, but I want you all to be prepared for this stuff as well. So you got to read. You got to read. So do y'all have any questions right now? Because this class is over. I want you to read the rest of the end of this book, starting at the end of life issues. And I want you to start reading your next subject. At least get a head start on it so you'll know some things.
So for our homework or our quiz, you just want us to just answer the questions as they are?
Oh, on your quiz? Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And do anybody have any questions since my office is officially open?
I was going to ask about, well, I texted you actually to ask about the grades, because on the Canvas it doesn't show any grades.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm still working on you all's grades. I want to post them all at one time, but I'm still working on them. But I will definitely have them all done by Friday for sure. That's like how many? There's so many of you guys. It was so much easier when it was less people, but now I'm having to do more people, which is me taking my time to make sure you all get credit for your answers and stuff. So I do apologize for that, but I'm only here 3 days a week.
I understand.
So in between, I'll definitely have them finished by Friday for sure. So y'all have your grades. Y'all have any other questions about anything in regards to this?
No, ma'am. You have a good day.
You guys too, what are y'all studying tomorrow in skills?
Oxygenation.
Oh, that should be easy. What do y'all got to learn? How to set up an O2?
Yep. O2
Oh, that's
nasal cannula, and I think that's it.
Oh, that's a short one. So whoever didn't finish bed making, you have to finish bed making tomorrow. I know who you are. I'm sure you know who you are. So make sure that you get your practice in. You might want to come in a little earlier and practice if you can. But you definitely need to practice. And if y'all didn't finish hygiene baths and giving baths to males and females, make sure you come in early for that before 9 to just practice that. So we can get into the O2 stuff real quick. So I could possibly work on grades while I'm sitting there or doing, I could work on them tomorrow. Let's see.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
All righty.
Y'all have a good day.
You too.
Thank you.
See y'all tomorrow. Anybody wants to stay online and holler at me, feel free to do so. Everybody else can go.
Well, I was only asking the question about the.
Now that was a different person. We had someone different online here that doesn't look like Miss Ashley.
Looks like.
Ashley, you changed a lot.
We have a new person online, a new male.
He was doing something on my computer. Sorry. That's my best friend.
So,
Okay.
Miss Jackie.
Huh?
So I guess like you answered my question, but like the first two quizzes, could you answer me that? Like, I guess because there's no grades whatsoever, but I haven't heard anything back from the other two that we had discussed.
Oh, I said that I was good, that was okay, that I was going to just grade you. I'm not going to give
Okay.
you a 0. I'm going to do your grades.
I super really appreciate that, Miss Jackie.
Oh, of course, my dear, of course. Are you working on getting that taken care of though?
I figured out how to do it now. I think I downloaded or have something downloaded called, it's with the Gmail thing. So we figured out some way to do that. I think it's called Google Docs, something like that.
Yeah, I think someone else did that last semester. They figured out a way to
Do it and get it
do it
turned
other
in.
than through Firefox.
Yeah, because the
Don't
one
think
that,
download into Canvas, because if it doesn't get in Canvas, it's hard to grade it
right.
and
And that's
put the grades in Canvas.
right. Well, that's the problem I was having. I wasn't able to transfer it back and forth. That's why I had sent it through, just copy pasted it into an email. But I think I have it figured out now, so we should be good. So for this week, it should be fine.
Okay, good.
All right, Miss Jackie, thank you.
You're welcome.
See you tomorrow. Have a good day.
You too. Anybody else?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, Miss Renisha.
Hey, Miss Jokes. You never got back to me. I sent you a text message about the alternate flashcards.
Alternate flashcards.
Remember, I asked you if I could make it on a different website, like Quizlet, for example. They have a place where you can make flashcards, but you can make a lot of them at one time, as opposed to just 3.
I don't know whether you could download those to Canvas. Have you tried downloading them to Canvas?
No, ma'am, I haven't. I could download.
I would try to download them to Canvas and see if that works. If it doesn't, you'll have to let me know, and you'll have to go through CRAM.
Okay.
Because other students have been able to do that. Why don't you get with Mr. Aaron?
Okay.
Because Mr. Aaron did all of his cards. He's already done with all of his cards.
And I have to do by the end of week 7 or the beginning?
You'd have to look on the let me see if I have it close to me. Let's see. Let's check this out. 7, 7, 7. I'm trying to see when it's due here. I'm looking on this calendar. Okay. I don't have my syllabus in front of me. I have just my calendar.
Okay.
And I'm trying to see if I actually see it. I want to say week 14. Oh, the flashcards are due week 14.
Yes, okay, give me some time.
So it's due at 11:50 in Canvas. So after 11:51, if you don't get it downloaded into Canvas, it's not done. It'll cancel you out.
I know we got midterms coming up, I believe, in week 7, I believe. I know we got 8.
Midterms.
Huh?
Week 8 is midterms.
Oh, well, I guess
All
it's
midterms.
a big exam for ATI in week 7, I believe. And I know I've been looking at week 7 for something.
Week 7, we'll hopefully take the time out to just kind of go over terminology and concepts, just kind of give you a brief review. after class, around this time between 3 and 4 o'clock, we'll do a quick review of midterm. I don't have to do this, but I'm gonna do this. I'm just gonna be questioning you
Okay.
and asking you questions.
Yes, ma'am.
So you definitely need to study for that test because I'm not giving you answers. We
Okay.
don't give you answers to the questions. We don't tell you your exam is going to be on this subject, this subject, this subject. We're not specific like that.
Okay.
Like it was in high school or any other course. Nursing is totally different. You have to learn how to critically think about what you've been reading
Okay.
and what's in your notes, because most of it is probably going to be like scenarios.
Okay.
And you have to kind of know and understand what these terms mean.
Okay.
So that's why it's important to read. I can't possibly give you all that information in a 1-hour course. So you have to read.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And that's when any of these classes coming up, you have to read.
Okay. And you did ask a question about, is it easier for us to read in the books or online? It is much easier for me to do it with ATI's modules than for me to be able to do it in a book.
Well, I'm just letting you know, this particular courses, they don't have any ATI quizzes. This
Okay.
is a beginning course terminology. I mean, there's little exercises that you can do, and every once in a while I'll post them, like maybe next week. If I have time, I'll post them.
Okay.
So it's like, tell me what this means. What is this question? What is this word? Or something like that.
Okay.
We have something like that. But in concepts, they don't have anything in concepts like that. They do have questions that I can ask you, which is probably what I'm going to do during review, ask you these questions. But like this particular right here, week 5, I couldn't finish all of week 5, everything on this module, on this PowerPoint, because there's so many definitions that you need to know. So we're going to start off with that next week.
Yes, ma'am.
But I encourage you, and I'm telling you, and you best believe that it's important for you to read ahead of time, so when you do get into that particular class, you already have it on your mind. You already know what's outlined and what you should understand. And I'm just adding to what you should already know, or I can answer to what you don't understand and don't know.
Okay, I'll make sure I start doing that. What was next week for your class? I'll know that which topics to go read about then.
Well, we're gonna finish week 5, which starts with I forgot what I said. It's gonna start with patient's right to consent. If you haven't read the chapter, you need to read week 5's chapter.
I can read it. I can read week 6 over the weekend.
And I want you all to start looking at your syllabus. This is why we go through all the trouble of doing these syllabuses, because you'll know what's next, this lesson plan. Week 6 is a communication.
Okay.
It's a communication lecture. All right.
Thank you,
That's
Ms.
it.
Stokes.
All right. See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye. Be on time now, Miss Renisha.
Yes, ma'am, I will.
All right. Bye-bye.